Welcome back. Today, we're digging into Ezalife, an investment deal that's all about a really simple solution to a surprisingly common and pretty stressful medical problem. So the big question for any potential investor is this: is this an overlooked gem, or is it just a super high-risk venture? Let's break it down and see what we find. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the problem they're trying to solve. Then, we'll dive into the product itself. After that, we'll check out the early data to see if it's working. Next up, the business model behind it all. Then, the big one, the bull versus bear debate. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a final perspective. It's the full picture from start to finish. So first things first, let's talk about the problem. Any solid investment case has to start with a real, painful problem. And for Ezalife, it's one of those issues that's happening all around us, but you'd probably never hear about it unless it's happening to you. So just how big is this problem? Well, get a load of this number. Over 1 million. That's more than 1 million families in the US alone who are using these things called gastrostomy buttons, or G buttons, every single year. These are basically feeding tubes that provide critical nutrition, often for kids or adults who have ongoing health conditions. Okay, so you've got this piece of vital medical tech. How do you make sure it stays put? Well, for decades, the standard, accepted way to do it has been tape and gauze. Yep, you heard that right. In our age of medical marvels, the go-to solution is basically something you'd find in a basic first aid kit. And as you can imagine, that comes with some serious problems. And here's the thing. When that tape and gauze fails, it's not just a minor hiccup. It kicks off this incredibly stressful domino effect. The tube gets accidentally pulled out. Almost immediately, the opening into the stomach, called the stoma, can start to close up, sometimes within just a few hours. That means a panicked rush to the ER for what can be a really painful reinsertion procedure. It's awful for the child, and it's a nightmare for the parent or caregiver. And that frustration, that reality on the ground, that's exactly where this solution was born. This isn't some gadget that was cooked up in a lab by people who've never seen the problem. It came directly from a doctor who was sick and tired of seeing this happen again and again. This quote from the founder, Dr. Stephen Moulton, who's a pediatric surgeon, it just says everything, doesn't it? He's the one treating these kids, seeing them come back to the hospital with a problem he knew was preventable. He just thought there has to be a better way. So he went out and invented it. And this is it. It's called the Button Huggie. At its core, it's a simple, disposable little device that just mechanically holds that G button steady. And the keywords here are adhesive-free, so no more skin irritation from tape, and it's built specifically to stop that wiggling and movement that leads to dislodgement. This chart really lays it all out, side by side. It's pretty stark. The old way, tape and gauze, well, it gets a big X on every single one of these key features. 360-degree protection? Nope. Reducing external force? Nope. By contrast, the Button Huggie is designed to do all of it. It's just a completely different approach to the problem. Okay, let's talk about the boring but super important stuff, regulations and patents. The Button Huggie is registered with the FDA as a Class 2 device. And here's a big win for them. It's what's called 510(k) exempt, which basically means they get to skip a really long and expensive approval process. That's a huge shortcut to the market. Plus, they have a US patent granted. But let's be clear, getting these things is a critical step, but it's absolutely no guarantee of commercial success. So we've got the problem, and we've got the proposed solution. But the million-dollar question is, does it actually work, and are people buying it? It's time to look at the early numbers, both from the clinic and from customers. This is the headline number right here. In their own study with 178 patients, the company reported a 77% reduction in how often these G buttons were getting pulled out compared to the old tape and gauze method. Let me say that again. 77%. That is a massive improvement. Now, and this is a big but, it is important to know this is the company's own internal data. It hasn't been validated by outside peer-reviewed studies yet. And it wasn't just about the numbers on a chart. The study also looked at the human element. The caregivers, the parents and nurses on the front lines, they reported being much happier with the device. They said it was easier to use and actually cut down on the time they had to spend on daily care. That's a huge quality of life win. So what about sales? Well, they launched directly to consumers. And you can see some initial momentum here. They did about $8.5 grand on day one. And a couple of months later, they were pulling in over $13,000 a month. Now, let's be real, these are early days. These numbers suggest that there are definitely people out there who want this, but it's a long way from proving this thing can scale up into a huge business. Okay, so we've looked at the what and the why. Now let's pull back the curtain on the how. What's the total market look like? How do they actually plan to make money and grow? And maybe most importantly, who's steering the ship? According to the company's own math, the total potential market for this kind of device is, wait for it, nearly $1.9 billion a year. And while they're starting with kids, which makes sense, you can see these other huge markets waiting: geriatric care and adults with long-term conditions who need these tubes too. So how are they making money? Well, right now it's pretty simple. They sell a month's supply direct to you online for $99. But the future roadmap, that's where it gets interesting. They're talking subscriptions for recurring revenue, getting into hospitals, and the big kahuna, getting insurance companies to pay for it. These are all great ideas, but they're just plans for now, and each one is a major mountain to climb. You know what they say, sometimes you bet on the jockey, not just the horse. So who's running this thing? Well, you've got the perfect founder story, the surgeon who lived the problem. But they've paired him with a team that has experience in actually building and selling medical tech companies. It's that combination of clinical insight and business know-how that they're betting on. Okay, this is probably the most important part of our whole breakdown, the bull versus the bear case. Let's put all the reasons to be excited right up against all the reasons to be nervous. This is where you really start to understand the investment. All right, on the one hand, the bulls will tell you, look, this is a real solution to a real problem invented by the perfect person. They're already making money, and people might buy this every single month. But then the bears will fire back. Hold on, those sales are tiny. They haven't proven they can scale. Getting insurance to pay for this is a total question mark. And have you ever tried selling something to a hospital? It can take years. Plus, you always have risks from manufacturing and competition. So, after going through the problem, the product, the data, and that bull-bear debate, what's the bottom line here? What's the final take on the Ezalife investment case? When you boil it all down, Ezalife is this really focused, compelling idea born from a genuine need. The story is fantastic, but its future success, whether it becomes a huge company or just a niche product, it all hinges on three massive things. Can they execute perfectly? Can they get insurance to pay the bills? And can they grow beyond that first wave of eager customers? And you know we have to say this, and we absolutely mean it. Nothing you heard today is investment advice, not a single word. An explainer like this is just to get you started. Any serious decision has to begin with you reading the company's official documents, the stuff they file with the SEC. So we'll just leave you with this one final question to chew on. The Ezalife story is powerful, right? A real problem meets a simple, elegant solution, so the core investment question becomes pretty simple too. How much risk are you willing to take on when the basic idea just feels so right? Thanks for tuning in.